Again, good afternoon. Hope you had a nice, quick break there. So far, I gotta say, it's been a blessing hearing the speakers. How about you? Amen. That was a powerful message given by Pastor Gomez. Next in line, we're gonna have Why Wait? When Patty Bird and Michael Carducci share a testimony, a message through a testimony.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This is, in so many ways, this is really an exciting time for me. I think partly because I just arrived and I was changing in the bathroom, and Patty is my good friend of almost 20 years. And we met in Greenville, Tennessee, where you moved, and I was living there a year when we met. And so the relevance to Pasadena, I haven't even seen Patty in almost a year, and I saw her for the first time in the lobby just a few minutes ago. So, wow, Patty, it's awesome to be here. It's my friend Patty Bird, and I think what I want to start with is kind of how we met, if you don't mind. But before that, let's have a word of prayer. All right, let's pray. Lord, you really are marvelous, and the song so eloquently talks about your grandeur and the way that you provide, and this story has been long coming. And Patty and I would spend time walking in the forests and in the country roads of Greenville, and we would share some really open things, some very personal things. And the opportunity to be here today and have this opportunity to share Patty's story, not only is it something that I know Patty has been longing to do, but it's something, Lord, that I see as an honor to be able to help her to tell her story. So we ask for your Holy Spirit, Lord, that you would guide, that you would direct, that you would take us on a journey and show us your redemption and your power. And I thank you, Lord, for my friend Patty. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So there's a really funny story that I have about you, Patty, just to lighten the mood a little bit. Yeah. Well, I wasn't even a part of this one, but I remember Patty grew up in California, and she was looking at properties in Greenville, Tennessee, and literally, Greenville is as green as its description in its name. And I remember that you were looking at houses, and the realtor was really troubled or puzzled that you just kept looking out the windows at every house that they...
circling around the house.
Okay. All right, so tell them why, or tell them what happened, because it's really funny.
So as you mentioned, I'm a Southern Californian, and we moved there, and it's very green naturally, but I wasn't used to that. So I kept looking like, where are the sprinklers? Like, how can this grass be so green without sprinklers? He just was like, what are you talking about? I said, there's no way that this house cannot have sprinklers because this grass is so green. But he just laughed at me because he's like, it's called the rain. I was like, oh, okay, we're not used to that.
It's one of my favorite stories. I tell it all the time. But in particular, in 2005, you moved to Greenville. I had been there for about a year, and I had a salon in my basement. I'm a hairdresser by trade. And your cousin, I think, had kind of connected the two of us, and I'd never met you before. And I remember it was in an afternoon. I think you had just gotten off work, and you were coming in for a haircut. Can you just kind of share, like, how we met?
Well, there's some background to that of why
Good.
I did.
Yeah.
So I had gone through a really difficult separation from my husband at that time, and was in a lot of turmoil and tumultuous time. And I was not too keen on men at that point in my life. So my cousin had told me about Michael. I needed my hair done, so I was like, okay, I'll go in there. And I was in a bad place. I was bitter and angry, and I was kind of stuck. So I go, I'm exhausted, I just worked, I was a single mom and 3 kids, walk into the salon, and I see Michael there with this beaming face, and I'm like, why is this guy so happy? What's he smiling? Don't smile at me, kind of a thing. I mean, it wasn't anything weird, it was just he was a man and he was smiling, so that was enough to be like, whoa. But anyway, so I introduced myself, and I know you need to tell your side of that when you saw me come in with that scowl on my face.
Yeah. Your pain was palpable.
Yeah,
it was for sure. What was really, I don't know for you, but I remember that during that time that we had the exchange, I remember thinking to myself, your pain again was so obvious, but of course I didn't know your story and I didn't know you at the time. And I could tell that you started to relax throughout our visit, and hopefully it's because you liked your hair, I don't know, but that's what began a really incredible friendship at that time. So, Patty, I want to get to a place where we can start kind of at the beginning, but in my mind I have so many stories. There's a slide that you're supposed to be putting up on the board to show Patty and I in younger days. We used to go hiking.
I'm afraid.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, remember the first time that we went camping on Max Patch? And we stayed there that night, and Patty had two smaller kids, and I know Julia didn't come, but your two smaller kids came, and you brought this little porta potty for the tent, and anyway, it was a really wonderful time. My sister was freaked out by the bugs, remember?
Yes. The gnats were terrible,
yes. Yeah. Okay, I'm sure it'll come up. You'd rather look at Patty anyway, that's much better. So Patty, if you would, take us on a journey, and I want you to start, if you would, at the beginning of your childhood, because there were some things that happened there that definitely had an effect in your life, and I think for other people that may have gone through something similar, they can relate. And so a lot of times, it's the things that happen early that really start to shape, a lot of the choices and things that we make in our life.
Yeah. So I was raised in a large family. There were 6 of us, and I was number 4 out of 6. I had my sister was the oldest. I had 2 older brothers, 2 younger brothers. We were raised Adventist. My dad was not Adventist, but he was Christian, and we we traveled back and forth to Ecuador. My mom is from South America, Ecuador, so we kind of were all over the place. But when I was 3, I'm pretty sure it was at that age, I went through a situation that I didn't remember until recently, maybe some more of the detail of it, but I was molested by a family friend's son, who at that time was 12, 10, 12 maybe.
So he's 12 and you're 3.
3, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And I didn't remember any details at that time. I went through a really intense just a small class over the past year and a half, and I was able to recall some more memories from that during that time, and let God have some healing in my heart from that time. But remembering that kind of made sense of why other things came about later in my life. It was like, I feel like the enemy sometimes, he targets us, and it's usually there's a theme of the target in our life that he targets us with. So for me, it was, and for many of us, especially as women, our sexuality. And so, of course, at the age of 3, I didn't even recall that until later. But I know by the age of 5, I was very much, I wouldn't say sexually aware, but I was aware of my body. Like, that's when I started the self-abuse, masturbation, but not really knowing what that was or why, and I know that's also kind of a weird developmental thing too. A little bit of background, I am an occupational therapist, and so that helped me understand also in my adult years of why I did some of the things I did. But I kind of got stuck in that, and I didn't know why, but looking back, having known that I was abused as a younger child, it awakened something that should not have been awakened until much later. Because when you're 5 years old, you don't know, much about that kind of, at least back then, they didn't talk about it, and so it was something that the enemy was trying to trap me with, to enslave me with. So
there was also some insecurities going on at that time, and we were talking kind of about the value that you felt that you had, and I think that it's pretty common also with when there's multiple children in a home and other children are getting more of the attention. Were you an attention-seeking kind of kid?
Okay, so it's a little bit of a unique situation in our family. So there were the first 4 of us, and I was the youngest, and then there was 5 years between me and my other brother, and then another 5 years between him and the other. So I was the youngest child for a while, and I'm told I was quite bratty, but Mom, is that true? No, just kidding. No, so
we're not going to confirm that.
And then when my brothers came along, that kind of bumped me into the middle child position. So my brother that's just above me, he and I were close, and we were kind of the middle kids together. And yeah, you kind of get lost in the shuffle because the older ones are like more demanding and dominating, and the little ones need a lot of attention. But both my parents were very loving with all of us. But you get lost in the shuffle sometimes. So a lot of times I didn't feel seen or heard, or that my heart needs were being met.
So the damage of a 3-year-old being sexually molested, I think the term is you had become sexualized, and you didn't know what that necessarily meant, but it did include some exploration later on. But I think that it also had a hold on you later on as you started to develop, going through puberty. You said that, I remember the story, I have it in my mind, how you said that you loved riding your bike to the ocean.
Yes.
So for somebody that's an inlander, that's like really amazing to think that you can ride your bike to see the ocean every day.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit.
So we grew up in Ventura, but we lived on the east end, which was maybe 5 miles inland. And so I had my brother's old big Schwinn bike that I would climb on and ride down to the beach. That was my place of refuge, where I could just go and be with God and just tell him all my problems. I'd sit on the jetty and watch the waves come in, and it was just my time with God and my place of peace.
How old were you?
I started doing that when I was about 13, because back in those days it was safe to ride your bike around. Yeah.
Okay. So at 13 years old, there was some things happening as you were riding your bike, and you're fit, and it's in the summertime, and you said that the men in the cars would respond, and I just think of that again as a connection to the sexualization of this little 3-year-old kid, and now at 13, what was your understanding of who you were?
Right, that was closer, maybe 14, 15, but it just made me feel like I wasn't wanting that attention, and so it made me feel like, and what am I, just this thing to be an object, So
what was it that the men were doing?
just whistling. I mean, it wasn't like anybody was trying to do, but back then also that was more acceptable than it is now. But it always made me feel uncomfortable, and I just felt like, that sexualization, like, am I worth more than my body?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you started dating in high school.
Barely. So so the summer of when I was 14, I was at a Taco Bell with my dad, and we were ordering food, and long and short of it is there was a young man in there who was friends with someone that I knew that worked there, and he pressed her to give my information of who I was, and he basically like pursued me hard, and he was 17, I was 14 at the time. So he was older, and for all practical purposes, I was still like innocent. I really still didn't understand about a lot of things, sexuality and such. And so I ended up, going out with him, and towards the end of the summer, and by the time my 15th birthday came around in October, it had gotten to the point where he, wouldn't take no for an answer. And back then they didn't have this term of date rape, but that's essentially what happened on my 15th birthday.
And in Latino culture, that's a quinceañera, right? That's a big event.
Right. Well, it wasn't for the
Okay.
Ecuadorian, no. So 16 was still.
How sad that here again you're basically date raped on your own birthday.
Yeah, it was stolen from me. Because I was a good girl. I was a Christian girl. I went to church. I had good friends. I had good grades. I wanted to do things right, and I wanted to save myself for marriage. And so when that was stolen from me, that was devastating on so many levels, and I didn't tell a soul what happened. I was so ashamed, and all those any previous feelings of unworthiness just came rushing in, and the enemy completely used that to try and squelch me, my spirit, because I really withdrew. I went from being a happy, huggy girl to like very withdrawn and just kind of minding my own business. So that was hard times, because I ended up staying with him for all through high school, pretty much for 4 years, because I felt trapped. I felt like, who's going to want me now? This has happened. I was basically an object to him. And, thankfully he didn't like physically abuse me, but it was, sexual abuse. And I didn't recognize all of that as such at the time, because you're in this and you're just like, okay, I guess this is how it's supposed to be. This is not what I wanted, and unfortunately, I'm a very loyal person. And so it's like, okay, I'm with this person and I guess this is how it's going to be.
Did the thought ever cross your mind that this was who you would marry, or because
Eventually,
you were with him for a long time?
For 4 years, yeah. So, he wanted to get married when we were getting a little bit older, but we were, I was still pretty young. We had talked about it, but it wasn't, I was still in high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I was wondering that because you had been sexual with him, was that in your mind thinking, all right, we can correct this problem if we get married?
Right, but
Okay.
We had planned to later when I graduated from high school, but we broke up before then. Yeah.
Okay. I think that when John invited me to come for this weekend, one of the issues that we were really strong about, that I brought up, it's a lot of times there's sexual issues that we don't talk about in church culture, and through this relationship with this boy, something happened that really had a lasting impression on you even till today. And Patty, I know that this is probably going to be uncomfortable, but I think that most people have never heard it in a church setting before, and this is why God has ordained and allowed this opportunity.
And I've been fighting this moment for many years. Michael asked me
she's got Kleenex. Okay.
Give my testimony many years ago, and I was like, no way, especially not in the Adventist church. There's just no way. And here I am, so by the grace of God.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
So out of that relationship, that happened on my 15th birthday. A few months later, I realized I was pregnant, and was scared. Still at this point, I wasn't telling a soul about anything that was happening in my life, not my best friends, nobody knew. And so my boyfriend at the time, had been through things before. I was not his first, for sure. And so it was like, oh, I know how to take care of this problem. So he drops me off at Planned Parenthood. And again, it was like, back then they didn't talk openly about abortion like they do now. Like like I didn't really know what it was. Other than,
did you know where he was taking you?
I knew that was a place, where they did abortions, but I didn't fully understand. Like you're in your mind, you're like, okay, it's just something that's there. You don't think of it as a child. I was so young myself to fully understand really what I was about to do.
Right.
And so he dropped me off there. I was by myself. This is harder than I thought it was going to be. It was just one of those moments where you're just like, all right. And I had a relationship with God. You have to understand this. I never threw God out, and God was right there with me.
Amen.
But I was in this place alone, afraid. They didn't spell out any other options to me. It was just like, oh, you're here for this. Let's take care of this. You'll be fine. It'll be over with. You'll go on with your life. You'll be happy you did it. And it's like, okay, trusting the adults around me. And so I had it done, and I remember laying there just in this cold place, looking up at these lights, and just tears rolling down my face, like what's even happening right now? And they did the procedure, and I woke up alone in the recovery room, and my boyfriend got off work, came and picked me up, never said a word about it, didn't talk to anybody about it for a very, very long time. It was a very, traumatic experience trying to process really what had happened, but not really understanding what I had just done.
So, Patty, I think that everybody, that's been in situations similar can understand this kind of confusion or fog. Was it like a fog?
Yeah, I just was walking through life. Yeah, just at that point, those years were kind of all a blur. It's like you're in this repeat of this terrible situation that I didn't want to be in, because it wasn't anything the way God designed it to be. It was abuse, and I was basically a sex toy, really. And so it was a difficult situation and just praying, Lord, I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know how to get out of this. But yet I was still going to church. I was still in church. I was studying. And ironically, during this time, I have the same Bible that I've had since I was 16. But I had my first real spiritual awakening of the hunger and thirst for the Word during that time when I was 16. And so this is after the abortion and in the middle of all this craziness. And so again, I never felt disconnected from God. It was just trying to make sense of it all. And in some strange way, because I wasn't seen or heard in my family, like my perception, even though it was a dysfunctional thing, it was like, at least I'm getting some kind of attention, and this person notices me and knows who I am, and those kinds of things.
Sure. So he really played on that.
He did.
And the insecurity.
And he was not a Christian, so I'll just say that as a disclaimer. He never claimed, even if he was, I know this happens even amongst both people who are claiming to be Christians. Yeah.
Right. Interestingly enough, I had a conversation with a nurse that worked in a local hospital near one of our universities and academies, and she said that today, that the number one users of the abortion clinic in her area are the Adventist University and the Adventist Academy. There's no doubt in my mind that this issue is much bigger than even what it was, when you were 15 and 16 years old.
Yeah, because it's much more available, it's acceptable, and I wish that somebody at that age had talked to me openly about sexuality, what abortion was, like that I had been informed. I wish somebody had stepped into my life to do that, and that is why I'm here right now. Because I want others to know that this is real, this is happening amongst our young people. This happened, I'm 54 years old now. That happened when I was 14, so it's been many years. And, I'm 15, and I just, I want to share my story so that others will know, first of all, that this does happen, even in our own churches, even with the good girls and boys, and that God is still with you. He never abandoned me. He walked with me through every aspect of my life, and he has redeemed my life in ways that I never thought possible. Never thought possible.
Which is beautiful, but I still want to, unfortunately, explore some of that pain, because I think that the world puts out this picture that, you have the abortion, you'll go on with your life, you'll be happy. Patty, you've got 3 beautiful children, and yet, what was the effect of what happened to you when you were 15 years old, even as an adult woman, even as a mother that has 3 beautiful children? What were you living with on a regular basis?
Well, first let me back up and say, and I had told you this before, and it wasn't until very recently that I confessed this to any other human being, but I actually ended up getting pregnant again when I was 17, still with the same guy. And I ended up having a second abortion. And I know, even saying it out loud, it's like, but it happens, and even to those of us who would never, I love children, and I love my children. Anybody who knows me knows I love children. And yet at the time, again, it was in that mindset of I don't even want to be in this, I don't want anything to do with this, but yet I'm stuck, and what do I do? And even though I was a little older and maybe understood a little bit more, I still didn't fully understand what I was doing. And I don't use that as an excuse. It's like, it follows you the rest of your life. You have that, that feeling of some sense of loss and grief that is so deep that only Jesus himself can reach in there and touch it and heal it.
So that grief, you still live with that today?
No.
Okay.
I mean, in the sense of I am sad that happened, but I'm not stuck there. And I had my sense of self-worth back then, and for many years was so low because of, when I started connecting the dots of I must not be very, worthy of real love because, these people are just kind of using me. And even when I finally did get married, I married another Adventist guy. I thought it was going to be this, I'm finally going to have sexuality in the right context, and it still, didn't end up being,
Sure.
what it should have been.
So I think what's interesting, Patty, is I want to back it up a little
Yes.
bit to Julia.
Yes.
And the circumstances that happened there. And kind of the devil was already setting up the stage, the molestation at 3, the sexualization, the awareness, the masturbation, the exploration, not 1 but 2 abortions. So now, you're in college, you're smart, intelligent, you're pretty, and I'm thinking that now your self-esteem is probably even lower because of these circumstances that kind of like these knots that the devil has put in the rope of your existence. So again, talk about, your first relationship, significant relationship as an adult.
Yeah, so actually when I went off to college, I felt I had broken up with that first boyfriend. And I just felt such a weight come off of me and such a freedom. And I did go to an Adventist university, and I just felt finally a sense of others who understood, the spiritual part of me, because I didn't have that with that relationship. And I just immersed myself in everything I could. Got involved with the singing and with every kind of Bible study group, and I came alive. Actually, I just came alive. That was my second spiritual awakening.
Amen.
During that time. But yet, deep inside, I carried, some of that guilt and shame still. But there was someone I dated during that time that really spoke life into me, and God was using people all along the way to try and say, I don't see you as this, whatever you think you are, like unworthy, unclean, murderer, these things that go through your head. And instead it was God trying to speak, I see your heart as pure. And I'm like, how can you see my heart as pure? How? Lord, you know what I've done. You know what I've been through. You know what I've compromised. But yet there were just people throughout that time that was, he was really trying to speak that into my life. God was.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So then I went through university, and I was getting frustrated because 2 reasons. I really did want to be married and have things in the right context, but it didn't seem like it was working out with anyone. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the Christian guys really weren't much different than the non-Christian guys.
Wait a minute. Could you say that again, please, but this time a little louder?
A lot of the Christian guys were not much different than the non-Christian guys, and they still kind of wanted the same things. And so you girls, you know what I'm talking about, right? So I was disillusioned, I guess, because I had gone through public high school, and I was finally on this Christian campus and thinking, there'll be all kinds of, great guys that'll honor and respect, and it really wasn't that way. And so I got kind of disillusioned. So during my junior year, I was doing a clinical rotation, and I ended up meeting someone who, again, was not a Christian, but he was nice and charming and started pursuing me. He worked there, and I was a student there, and we ended up dating. And even though after our first date, I knew in my heart I should have nothing to do with this person, I just kept going because it was like, well, God, you obviously you can't bring me, what I want, so I'm going to take matters into my own hands and just go ahead and go with this relationship, because at least he's nice to me and, charming, and he was, he had good qualities. But
how old were you at this time?
At that time, I was 22.
Okay.
21.
Okay.
And he was a year older than me. But so we ended up in a relationship that eventually became sexual, and we were committed to each other. We were planning on getting married. He had already proposed to me. We actually ended up moving in together, and that's when I got pregnant. But this time I did not. I chose, I was like, I'm keeping this child. I'm old enough to know, because in the meantime I had really learned about, what abortion really was and what that looks like, literally, because I had a friend who was like trying to show these abortion videos, and I was horrified at what I saw. And when I realized that what I had really done, that was devastating. That was in my late teenage years. Yeah.
You said something to me this morning. No, I think it was earlier this week. You said something to me about when Julia was born.
Yes.
And that was when the crushing reality
Right. So
Can you talk about that?
yes. So I was pregnant. We went through the pregnancy. The moment that she was born, it was a hard labor, but it's like you forget the pain as soon as they come, and it's like the moment I held her in my arms, and I looked at that little face, and I was like, oh my God, what did I do? With the other ones, it was like the full reality hit me of what I had done to my other children, and that mother heart, I broke in 1,000 pieces. It was like more than ever, because seeing this precious newborn, my true firstborn, is like, man, that was a time with God of just really opening that wound wide, and He only does that to heal us, not to further hurt us.
That's right. And how beautiful that He allowed this beautiful gift to be the reality of, like, this is what happened.
Right.
Yeah, I still see some safety in that, Patty, that and compassion. How God says, yes, this is what happened, and still in the same breath, here's your firstborn.
Right.
Okay, so things didn't work out with that guy. You didn't get married to him.
Did not marry him. Thankfully, he ended up having some addiction issues that I was unaware of, that became very clear after Julia was born, and I had, for her safety and my safety, we didn't proceed in that relationship.
Were you finished with school?
Yes, I had already graduated. I had my degree, thankfully. I had made it through college.
22, single mom?
No, I was 23 when I was 24 when I had her. I was 23 when I graduated, 24 when I had her, just going on. So yeah, so I was a single mom at that point.
All right. And so there's more to the story.
Yes, so I mentioned when I finally met another Adventist man who I thought, okay, finally, after all this, he's a good guy, he believes in God, we were raised the same, we can talk about the deep things of God, we study together, he loves nature, all these things that I thought were just like perfect. And so I, chose to enter into a relationship with him, and we'd been dating a while and crossed that line, because as you mentioned, it's easier each time to cross that line. And so we got pregnant with my second child, his first.
Right.
And we had already talked about getting married. But I didn't want to rush a wedding, but he wanted to go ahead and get married. And so we did. When I was 5 months pregnant with my middle daughter, we got married, and it was, I thought, wonderful. He was good with my older daughter. At that time, she was almost 5 years old. She was 4. And I thought, okay, we're finally going to have this great little family, and a couple years later I had my son. But, as I mentioned, it was there was a pornography issue that I was unaware of. And then ultimately he ended up leaving me for a much, much younger woman. And that was devastating. It was absolutely devastating, because I thought, okay, through all of that, I finally found someone who truly accepted me, loved me, was willing to take on this other child that wasn't his, and all of this. But it ultimately ended up, not working out. And so that devastation of, yet again, feeling rejected and unworthy of being truly loved. And it took me many years, as you know.
Right.
That's when we met, was fresh out of that situation.
Yeah. Wow. And again, I didn't realize until we started talking recently about what happened to you when you were 3 years old.